Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see you've all found our webinar this afternoon on this beautiful Monday, July 15th. Also, for those of you not being on summer holiday or not yet, really appreciate the large engagement into CluedIn's Master Your Data in a Week series. And for today's session, Alex and I welcome you on how to improve data quality by up to 60% in less than 6 weeks. For today's session, as you know, this is a whole series of events, so we might come a little bit short on time for Q&A, but don't worry, either ping them in the chat, we are happy to pick them up from there, or also continue the dialogue with you throughout this week's series with upcoming topics also around data integration, data governance, and so on and so forth. Now, without further ado, we would like to dive right into the topic. For those who will also join then during this series today, don't worry, everything is also being recorded. So if you missed any of those parts or you have to jump out, you can also get in touch with us later on the recording. Master your data in a week, and for today, how to improve data quality. We first wanted to start by briefly looking into the results of a Boston Consulting Group report that in a nutshell talks about winners and late movers towards generative AI, and characterizing for the winners that take now the opportunity, as a lot of you, I'm sure, have already engaged with generative AI and large language models, and focusing down on two critical aspects, and one of them being implementation of a high quality data foundation, which leads us directly to the topic of today's session. Now, if you ask Gartner, though, they are saying that at least 30% of GenAI projects will be abandoned after proof of concept already due to poor data quality and a couple of other reasons. Now, if that is not already clear enough, then we will tap into a couple of more challenges that data quality is currently facing. And throughout the day, we want to show you a little bit how CluedIn can help you fix this so that your GenAI projects are off for a better start and for a faster success. Why historically is it hard to achieve high data quality? We tried to summarize a little bit the feedback from the market and what we've gathered also in our experiences in many projects throughout the last couple of years. And mainly you can divide this into two big groups of challenges. One is this ever rising complexity, which is certainly not known to all of you. We are all looking at ever growing complex application landscapes, even though it has been and is still one of the core goals of IT organizations to standardize and harmonize. We know M&A activities are always constantly happening. We know technology shifts are happening. So companies we are talking to carry also a lot of legacy and technology depth, which then brings in a lot of those different data models, complex data harmonization challenges to even try to get to a data quality understanding. And second of all, it just takes way too long to get things done. Now, this is then again due to a set of multiple reasons, but in a nutshell, what we see is because things take so long to improve, by the time we actually have improvement in place, they're already outdated. They're already, again, carrying a lot of maintenance effort. And therefore, we do not see speed to market, and we do not see business value actually unfolding out of this, well, certainly early stage data quality improvement. Now, to summarize, for data quality improvement, what do you need from a general point of view when we talk about key initiatives to improve data quality? First of all, visibility and governance. It goes without saying, the traditional statement also applies to data quality. You can't control what you can't measure, and you can't improve what you can't control. So visibility on data in the first place, where it resides, how it is integrated, how I can get hold of this data is an impediment to even think about data quality improvement. Now, second of all, once we have a certain control on your data, of course, it comes to the measurement. You will see throughout today also a couple of those things in action, but effectively, it is important that however you look at your data, that you also establish processes to measure and to improve, and especially also important that you have this as closely as possible aligned to your business processes. It doesn't make sense to just in general look at the data, accuracy, or about the data volumes, or about the data details in certain metadata levels, but you always need to bring it back to the actual business process to actually understand, okay, does this data quality improvement also help my business, or is this just for the data sake of purpose? And last but not least, central processes and decentral ownership. A key aspect that we cannot miss out to put also some attention to, that of course data quality is not just a technology question, it is also an organizational and process challenge. And it is very important, and one of the firm beliefs that we will also talk throughout today, that decentral ownership does need to come to the data, and therefore data also needs to come to decentral data owners to bring them effectively into this data management practice. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Zarin. So the question now is coming up, how we do it with CluedIn, how we systematize data quality. This question has been in my hot topic for the last 15 years of my professional life. And working as a data engineer in past, where I have seen large financial institutions struggle heavily with inconsistent data and very bad data quality. Master data management, in my view, heavily overlaps in that topic. There might be a badly written records or records missing data, but it always comes to a question, how much of this record is actually a high quality data and how much is just should be thrown away. And this kind of information is what for me as a data engineer was always was an issue, is that I'm not, I'm a techie guy. I can exactly extract which one of the records contains nulls and missing values. But at the end of the day, it's if that is record better than the other record, it's not something that I personally know. And CluedIn, in this particular regard, it enables enterprises to streamline and systematize the processes of preparing the data. We track the quality levels so you can see the impact of your work. And there is less manual work, and it is this automatic recognition of data that needs attention. So, and what is most important is, as I mentioned before, is that any user would be able to come, clean the data, and address the data issues. It's not only me, like a data engineer or someone technical, that needs to be involved. They can come in and they are empowered to do these things themselves as well. There's no need to be a data expert to do these kind of things. So let's go with one example. As I have already come up to my usual point of view, is that when I look at the data, and when everybody looks at the data, the quality of this data itself is something which is one big unknown. And a reason behind this is that you don't know necessarily if for example, the city called Langs is actually existing or not. Because simply at this point of time, you don't know how valid is this value that is staying there. It usually comes up, and companies mostly are noticing these quality issues the moment it already has escalated within the business, when there's already too much information or too much losses, or something has happened that it was showing that, hey, this data record or this data was bad, and that's why it comes back to be fixed. So how CluedIn helps you out with that. So first things, and you on the next slide, first thing we're going to be trying to do is do this kind of a generic data quality metrics. Those ones are the ones that also Zoran mentioned before, is this completeness. As soon as any kind of record comes, be it customer, be it product, be it materials, we're going to be measuring immediately how complete is this record against what you expect the record to have, or how much accurate it is. Is it it's always coming the same value for certain first name of the person or first of the company name or something like this. And however, this is, as I said, it's not something that's necessarily enough for people to be happy with just how much quality of their data is. And for these purposes, we also have ability that using something like large language models, or which is nicely encapsulated within your own internal Azure environment, to be able to run the Copilot, for example, and chat with the data, chat that you're having, your enterprise data that you're having, and say to them, hey, I want to find all the validation rules that I could have built, which could help me have not just a senseless or mathematical true, it is missing value, or if it is not number or not right data type, but also in terms of a business itself, like for example, the address. Is this address having the right format? Is it actually a verified address? And so on and so forth. This kind of information is something that you can get automatically suggested by the large language model and automatically create for you, as much as it can, of course, its own rules. So you're not alone. You don't start from nothing. And these rules, these validation rules that you are building, would end up to be in one report that you can see something like this. If you go on the next slide. You can also, nevertheless, I just forgot to mention this one thing, is that you also can use the same Copilot to build a very complex rules, which in my opinion, I had this trouble just recently, where I had to create a complex validation rule for the postcodes in UK, which are pretty much having a structure, not only formatting wise, but also has a specific set of letters that you might have and so on. And all of these values is something that has taken me, before I actually used Copilot for this, it took me literally 30 minutes to do. And within Copilot, I took like 10 seconds to make this same rule again. And this is this process of creating those validation rules and these ways to recognize within data what else can you do, so that you can finally build your business-specific data quality report. So which we're going to be showing on next slide. And this means that now we don't have any more the address data, which is simply just one big unknown, which you see on the left side, but rather one validation specific, and I simplified in this case heavily, to just the data that you can see, okay, I have here 35% of the records which did not pass a one or another validation. So the question now is coming is always that, okay, we have so many rules that we have done and created, but that means that now we have enormous amount of data quality issues. And now what? We have to go on and give it to data steward to do one by one, each one of them. This will take too much time. And it will just simply something that is too much work, and usually we're going to be failing immediately in terms of adaptation process, because nobody wants to get enormous amount of work. And for these purposes, we also have additional help for those purposes. For example, in being able to use same OpenAI to run the rules and run the logic in their own textual way. If you see a little bit in the middle, there's this prompt part where you write your own text on hey, this address contains a postcode, please extract the postal code and tell me if it is valid or not, and suggest me the most closest one. This is textually written rule that you can use without really even needing to know much about, I don't know, formats or what all different values it could contain and so on, and let OpenAI just do these parts of the things for you. Of course, you can also give him an additional task of telling you what his confidence is, so that you can only work on the ones that he's not 100% confident in what would be the best value for it. If you, Zoran, go to the next slide. And this goes also with the cases of anomalies. What I have noticed personally is that there is always an enormous amount of data validation rules that you will not be able to think of, against also the possibilities of finding the new types of values which are essentially wrong just because typos are in the cities and you could not always see it, or the typos within countries. There might be some similar countries. And this can be also tagged and sent out as a normally a specific case to be either fixed automatically by Copilot or used as a, like a final check. Hey, this is also of wrong data. And this all turns out, this kind of auto corrections that we have been showing so far will all bring out in the end a little bit better report on the data quality, which means on the next slide, we're going to be able to see the much more improved data quality metrics, where we're going to be those already validated data we could see on the left side, which was this 35%, went even down lower to the 6% in this particular case, which was giving you this automatic correction that you don't need to do yourself beforehand. And now it is only those 6% that data stewards needs to work on. And this is much more manageable amount of workload that you need to do. And this means that now they don't need to also go in and log in into CluedIn every single time. They could also simply just get, using our Power Platform integration, we could also build, elaborate approval and workflows in any kind of way to kind of involve these people in different ways. For example, Teams is a very common use communication tool. We could also just tell them there, hey, there is some addresses which are bad. And then they can go back and just simply go into the records proactively, reactively, because the message came to them, and fix whatever they need to do. Same goes with approval. And this all can be customized to way how your business really needs to work. And if you go further, these data stewards which receive this message now can also go in and fix those data themselves manually using something called CluedIn Clean, which enables them also, again, gives a little bit of a suggestion. So it's not really just like a one-on-one manual work, but it's just give them additional suggestion towards how can you fix additional data. I am not 100% sure, fix it yourself. And this is what is the latest kind of a manual work, which is actually turning into rules again and giving you this final capability of making a deterministic rules to improve the data quality on the go. So, for example, in this case, in these three cities that we have seen in front of our screens, we have Leeds, London, and Sheffield. Every time they have written the same way. This way, it will gonna be always fixed from now on, and you didn't need to kind of approve this change only once. And then every new record, every new person that likes to write for London, just CluedIn will automatically correct it, and it will gonna be all fine.
Many thanks, Alex. I hope that gave you all a first good insight into the power of the CluedIn data quality improvement capabilities, tightly and closely aligned with the Microsoft Azure services for all sorts of data as well as AI capabilities that most of our customers utilize also by accessing CluedIn directly through the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. And that brings us actually towards the second question of now, as you've seen what CluedIn can do, and also who can directly engage with CluedIn, to Alex's point, we see a lot of subject matter experts, we see a lot of business analysts now stepping into this role of owning data parts or whole data products and interacting with the CluedIn Copilot, which makes it a much, much easier human-machine interface, especially as we see still some hesitance to directly engage with large language models due to the question of AI responsiveness in terms of ethical ways, in terms of compliance, CluedIn as an engine in between and helping you to orchestrate both the input towards the LLM as well as validating the output, to Alex's point. And we can expose this then further down to stewards who can actually still apply a 4 or 6 eyes principle and other workflows before we actually commit the output of those generative AI processes into your enterprise data. And that obviously brings a lot of speed to the table. Now, the other aspect is when we talk about bringing this to you and this business data quality improvement in just under 6 weeks, we also need to talk a little bit about technology and the process behind this to get you there in such a speed of time. And this brings us back to, well, most of our customers, as mentioned, have already invested into a Microsoft Azure cloud ecosystem, and therefore are typically quite common with their expert teams in data integration through Microsoft Azure services like Azure Data Factory, in data storage mechanisms like Azure Data Lake Storage, or the whole lakehouse approach, whether with Microsoft board services or with Databricks or Snowflake or others involved into this stack. They are often evaluating Microsoft Purview as a data catalog and data governance layer, looking into Microsoft Fabric with their unified analytics platform, Power BI, Power Platform, to Alex's point as well, which we very often integrate with for making approval and workflow chains fairly easy and a much less of an engineering and more a business effort with this no-code experience that Microsoft provides, up to the point of course, generative AI, which again is for sure one of the key enablers why we as CluedIn see first business results and use cases established after approximately 6 weeks, depending, of course, also on the engagement level that we can right from the get-go achieve with the involved parties. We have now established also a whole best practice catalog for that, which would be too much to share with you here in today's call, but we are happy to follow up with you individually to walk you then in more detail through the specific best practices that we now design for each of those weeks to ensure that we get quick business value shown and then further involve management, business stakeholders on your side to get their buy-in and to help them be part of this data transformation/digitalization journey. We wanted to summarize again, because I just mentioned this generative AI being for sure a very critical and large enabler towards also the CluedIn project. We wanted to summarize again where we see the 4 key areas right now that receive a lot of additional value add and faster business benefit by the involvement of CluedIn's Copilot based on Microsoft Azure OpenAI. And for sure, this goes without saying that the natural language processing and much more less technological savvy stakeholders engaging with the platform get to become part of this data supply chain and can directly interact with their data as per their terms, as per their business glossary/vocabulary. We see, thanks to CluedIn's inbuilt governance and governance rule processing, a lot of more risk-free automation, whereas we heard a lot, and I assume you did so as well, about those early days issues and sometimes still child sicknesses of large language models, whether this is about hallucinations, whether this is about missing contextualization, and so on and so forth. CluedIn governs all of that, tracks it, puts it into an audit trail at every point in time for you to be able to go back and understand whether this was a human input, a machine input, or a mix of both. Your master data copilot will bring you far, especially again when we talk about the speed in which you can establish such projects or first use cases. Alex gave just a very now simple example, but you can certainly do the extrapolation towards your business cases when he was mentioning this address validation on customer data, that it would require him before the Copilot extension 30 to 60 minutes to get those validation rules into the platform, whereas with the master data Copilot of CluedIn, it was a matter of seconds. Last but not least, data governance is certainly not the biggest topic we will start right off within those 6 weeks, where we first want to produce a couple of quick wins to further establish and strengthen buy-in with the wider organization in your enterprises. Nonetheless, it is crucial, especially when we talk about scaling, when we talk about bringing this into the wider organization, when we talk about bridging across different business processes where different data products will interfere. CluedIn brings, thanks to also this generative AI integration there, a lot of opportunity to enforce data policies, to automate the whole tracking of governance policies, and ensure that the business stakeholders can, in a compliant and secure manner, access the right data to get the right insight. To close this off, we wanted to again summarize everybody on this high-level outlook of CluedIn as a platform deployed as it is described here into your Microsoft Azure subscription, into your tenant as a platform as a service, which means in a nutshell that the data, your precious data, does not leave your secure environment, rather than that our intelligent platform comes to your data, right, and operates in your secure environment. With that, we want to close the chapter for today in our master data services in a week series. For tomorrow, please join us and let's have a deep dive into how we create data models as part of those early quick wins. We have, as per the official clock, 3 minutes left. I'm not sure if we have further questions either here in the call or in the chat. Alex and I are happy to answer those. Otherwise, as already mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, also very happy to follow up with you individually. You can reach out to the CluedIn team and we can take it from there.
Everyone, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to the second session of our Master Your Data in Week series. Today we will be talking about data modeling. So create your data model in 5 easy steps. And I know that's quite the claim for those of you who are familiar with data modeling and MDM, but bear with us, please. We have our arguments and we have our thoughts that we would like to share with you. So today we will be taking about 30 minutes of your time to run through why data modeling is very important in MDM and the different ways of approaching data modeling. My name is Zach. I am Enterprise Sales Lead for CluedIn, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Lucas. Lucas, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas. I'm the head of implementations here at CluedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucas. Just to check with you, Lucas, you can see my screen just fine, right? We can get going.
Definitely can do, yes.
Alrighty, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So let's set the scene first, a bit of context. I mean, some of you here attending this webinar are data veterans and you've been in the world, the wonderful world of data and maybe MDM. So this is more of a, as I said, context setting purposes. So as we know, all right, data modeling is crucial for master data management, or MDM, because that's what will ensure having that unified, having that accurate, consistent, and a single view of our critical business data across the enterprise. Now, this will help us obviously define and structure and master our data for our master data by establishing those relationships, right? By creating those rules, by supporting the data integration, the quality, the data governance, and so on and so forth. Now, that being said, we believe, or what we see actually in the market is beyond belief now. We've been a few years talking to our customers and our prospective customers. There is the traditional approach of going about your data modeling, and there is a different way, a new way, more of an innovative way, should I say, and today we will be talking about both. Nevertheless, the data modeling, as I said, is very important and we need to do it. We just have the idea of, instead of doing it up front, and this is something Lucas will expand on in a second, we believe of doing it differently, doing it throughout the process. So what do I mean first of all, by traditional approach. Traditional approach is really focused on a lot of upfront data modeling. So we do it upfront, right? So what we do is we reverse engineer the process. We start, or we discuss what would the end result would be, right? Whether it is customer data, what would that look like? Whether it is employee or product or partner data. And then we go back to the initial starting point, and then we start putting those data together and stitching it together. The problem with that is we have an idea of what the end result would be, but as we know, data is fluid, data is moving, and with that comes the question of, well, what if after doing all that work we have a new data source? What if after all that work we have a new different data type, right? So we have to go back each time and remodel our data, and that makes it quite rigid, which means it's quite cumbersome, it's quite resource hungry, and it makes that time to value quite long. Now, some of you already seen this slide if you have attended the session that we had yesterday, but it is just quite the evidence that some of the customers out there are suffering greatly from this approach. And as you can see, you know, we're having customers telling us it took us 3 months, maybe 6 months, and sometimes longer to get to that value. And we're still doing that work as we go through the process, which we believe is just doesn't go with what a modern enterprise should be looking at from a data perspective. Now, right? We live in an era where customers want everything yesterday. It's more competitive now than ever. We have our, data consumers that need to make decisions in a timely and accurate manner. So all of these elements needs to be taken into consideration when we're choosing our MDM or master data management solution. Now, that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Lucas to talk about the other way of going about data modeling.
Thank you, Zach. So as you were saying and alluding to before, a lot of our customers are having to deal with quite large MDM projects. They have very large and ambitious use cases that they try to tackle. And here is where we kind of take a bit of a different approach. We come in and we say, can we break this big use case? Let's say you have a global CRM problem where every country has a different CRM system, maybe the same CRM system, but different silos. Let's take it slightly smaller and let's break it down and say, let's take 3 countries and start modeling their data, start getting the value out of combining 3 systems, and then we will start joining all of these together. And that's where we come in with our kind of zero upfront modeling. If you take a look at a classic kind of customer view, there might be, 50, 100, 200 properties there that would describe your customer, but we don't require you to model all of these upfront. You don't have to bring all of them upfront. If you take the first 15 properties, the most crucial ones, and start your model there, that means you can start working, deduplicating, and increasing data quality on these 15 properties, meaning you're already starting to get value out of a very otherwise large data set. Now, to accompany that, we also offer you a data modeling using AI. So that's typically used when you have systems that are not straightforward to map, for example, SAP systems. If you ever worked with one, you know how many different variations of 5-letter words, well, they're not really even words, there may be, and what do they actually mean is sometimes unknown to even the SAP employees, speaking out of my own experience. So AI does have, and most particularly OpenAI, they do have that all collected. They can transcribe it and make it into a human readable data models for you. Now, once you have modeled it, as I said before, you will start building golden records. Even though they might be tinier, they might be expanding over time, there are people in your business that will greatly appreciate that just from the get-go. And of course, that can be done with any system data, right? So we're not necessarily locking ourselves in using CRMs, ERP systems. It might be any type of system you have, as long as we can extract data out of it, whether it's structured or unstructured, it can become a valid data that we can build the model for, that we can build the golden records for. So the way we typically do it is if we break it down, the bigger task into smaller chunks is we define the scope and the requirement of a smaller use case. So let's say the first use case is deduplicating and getting the value out of the customers out of the first core 15 fields. So let's say your customer first name, last name, phone number, email address, date of birth, address, etc. Once we have done that, we establish a very understandable goal. Let's deduplicate across 3 different source systems, right? I don't want to see any duplicates coming out of my 3 systems that would otherwise have duplicates. And let's define the time frame for us to do it. So typically, if we're dealing with 15 properties, 3 source systems that are relatively known and easy to integrate, I would say we can deliver golden record deduplicated. And we've done that in the past in probably a month or so. That's ready to use for your business, that's been handed over to your business, and you have people trained to how to use that data. The second thing is we look at the data and we do a little bit of a semantic modeling on it. So we define what are the entity types, also known as domain types in the kind of wider industry, what type of potential relationships there may be. So we analyze the data and see, okay, these fields might be foreign keys that we can use to form relationships in the graph database later. Good, we mark these down. We mark what type of data we are dealing with, whether it's personal, whether it's company data, what actually are your customers. Then we look at your data again, and we identify, first of all, what would be the primary identifiers, the unique identifiers that we can use for the very first line of deduplication. So these are called unique entity codes in CluedIn, and they can be primary keys in your database. They can be something that will always uniquely identify the customer, such as a customer number you invoke, or a social security number. We mark these down as well. These will be very handy in the future. And then we start implementing all of that in the CluedIn interface. So we have a user interface where you can mark all of these things, where you can look at the data, assign them to the CluedIn vocabularies from your raw data. And that's how we make our first data model. Now, data models in CluedIn are mutable, meaning you can change it at any point. You can add it, you can remove properties from it at any point, and the system is reactive to that change. So once you have made that change and you process the data, all of the rules will be re-evaluated, the golden records will be rebuilt, and they will be restreamed out to the end consumers. So there isn't a lot of damage that you can do by changing the data model, as it's not usual in an MDM space. If you've done something wrong, revert these changes, and it will be passed down to your consumers as soon as CluedIn is done processing, and will be in the state that was previously. Now, once we have done all of that, we have ingested our data. We see if we have managed to actually achieve the first use case. If we haven't, we iterate over it again. Perhaps we didn't have some core components to completely deduplicate the data, so we start pulling more fields from the source systems. If we are happy with that, we can essentially mark this use case as complete and then move on to another use case. It doesn't mean that you lock down your data model. You continuously work on it. You continuously expand your data model by enabling another system into CluedIn, adding another enricher, adding another rule, and that data model continuously grows until it satisfies all the areas of your business. That's how we do data modeling. Off to you, Zach. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucas. No, very interesting. And that's what I said, guys, at the beginning. The whole idea behind CluedIn and the way we are, the different flavor we're bringing to MDM is that this idea of making sure that everything is fluid and giving it flexibility to make a mistake 2 or 3 until we get to what we really, really want. And guess what? Even if that's not what we want, we can always go back, reiterate and re-ingest and work on it. So again, it's making it fluid, not rigid. So in a brief summary, what we're saying here is, you know, not only CluedIn has taken all these elements that made MDM quite the heavy project, quite the classical thing that is quite, you know, hungry resources and expensive and lengthy and so on and so forth, and not just eliminated, but it made it more simpler, faster, or better, right? And the idea here is more remove anything that's going to make working with data from an MDM perspective rigid. And I know I repeated that quite a few times. So, for example, the 3 months installation phase to get your MDM up and running, it's gone. All right. The potential, for example, of dreading whether this solution is going to be able to scale to our ambition is gone. We are born in the era of the cloud. We champion the cloud characteristics that we like. So scalability is one of the main components of what makes CluedIn different, right? I don't know, the first 6 months of that Excel job that we just talked about, which is all about data modeling and stitching the data together, is gone. You do it as you are working with your data through an easy to use interface with enhanced functionalities like AI to make that quite easy and fluid and quick, right? I don't know, involving our tech colleague or IT every time there is an issue with data is something that is gone. Why? Because we truly believe that MDM should be the bridge between IT and business, right? So providing this intuitive, easy to use interface with, again, OpenAI, and no upfront modeling is really supporting this idea of bringing new personas to the supply chain of data and very welcoming to, I don't know, domain experts or data stewards that would, for example, know what the actual customer data look like or what's the finance data look like. And those are the guys that need to be part of this story because, again, data is a culture. It's not one tool or two or a data platform. It needs to be championed and owned by all of us within the enterprise. So, I mean, again, the list is long of the things that we're eliminating, but the idea here, as I said, is to kind of make sure that MDM is welcomed, is implemented, is used, and is giving us the results that we need that we can trust in the shortest time possible while keeping that value and keeping that impact that our enterprise and our data consumers really need. Now, join us for our third day tomorrow, you guys. We will be talking about data integration, more specifically the top 3 challenges and how to overcome them. It will be delivered by one of my colleagues and our partner Adesso, and you can register using the QR code on screen here. I know this was quite quick and short. We are doing this on purpose, having like just few sessions that deliver enough value, but we are a friendly bunch and we would love to answer your questions in case you have any. And yeah, please reach out to us. We will be more than happy to have more of an in-depth conversation on data modeling or on MDM generally, and explain to you what is it that we do differently. Again,
to our next session in the Master Your Data in a Week with CluedIn, and today as well with one of our esteemed and strategic partners, Adesso. Before we dive into today's topic of data integration, the top 3 challenges and how to overcome those, I would like to give the opportunity to Lucas and Andreas, for those who haven't met you yet, to give a brief introduction.
That's good. Thank you, Søren. So my name is Lucas. I'm the head of implementations here at CluedIn, and I have touched quite a few projects that we have done in the MDM space. So I can here to share my experience.
Hi, also from me. My name is Andreas Martin Kolb. I'm a cloud solution architect and the partner manager on our side to CluedIn, and I'm very pleased to be here and give the word back to Søren.
Thanks, Andreas, and we are very pleased to have you with us. It's definitely great in nowadays difficult, ever-growing, complex data environments to line up with strong partners that have already seen thousands of data projects, with Adesso's 10,000s of consultants across the globe, and very helpful to also understand for us as CluedIn, thanks to those partnerships, where we can further align with other like-minded stakeholders or solutions in the market to help you as our customers to even further benefit from those data ecosystems. Which brings us back to why is data integration important, why it is for some people maybe also quite a pain and quite a challenge, but why is it a necessity when we talk about improving your data management, improving your data quality, improving the business value that you can extract from data. We will not come around data integration. So let's dive right in. Now for today, when we talk about data integration, and some of you have, and maybe most of you have already experienced a lot with this term, some good, some bad experiences. I myself, before I joined CluedIn, was very close to data integration with another software vendor for more than 3 years, and have also seen a lot of those projects, and have also received a lot of feedback about data integration from other enterprises. And we have tried together also with Andreas from our partner Adesso to summarize a little bit here the top 3 challenges that we hear from customers, that we hear from other industry peers, that we hear from analysts like Gartner and Forrester, or from consultancies that also often publish about how to extract and unlock data value. And you will often come across data integration as one of those steps that you need to take. So what do we have here? We have, first of all, often seen challenges with getting a first understanding from an overall governance point of view. What data do we have? Where does it reside? Who owns it? And therefore, of course, then the next question, when I know where to grab and where to go, how to access it, so that I have an opportunity to get the data to typically a central environment where data then would be processed, aggregated, and so on and so forth. Second, we often hear about the operational setup, including security and compliance when talking about integrating data. Who can even access which data from a legal point of view, from a data privacy point of view, from a business operation point of view. And also the question then, well, once we have clarified a couple of those questions, then how to set this up in an operational estate so that you can actually progress with your data modernization or with your digital transformation, so that you reduce actually the challenges and the complexity from data integration in such a way that you increase the level of automation, you increase the level of, well, typically we see a shift from processing in bulks or in certain packages towards a more real-time, more operationally streamlined automatic synchronization. Topics like change data capture come into perspective, and so on and so forth. Before we tackle this third one, which is another big topic for itself, and a lot that also then ties into other data challenges and into other data modules. What's your view, Andreas, also when you look into the other projects that you've been part of across a couple of those challenges?
I like to add to these 3 problems the view of from our side as consultants when going into this project. Most of the time when you look at the first problem, access and governance, mainly governance, you get at the beginning of the project, you mostly get an Excel sheet. And this Excel sheet contains some of the data sources you will confront while in the project, and maybe even some hints to what is the version of the data sources of the system it's running on, and so on and so on. And when you start a project, because this normally takes some time, this list is outdated, because Excel is not a system that keeps itself updated every time. So these are some standard problems we have. And then to the access and continuing to the security part, you mostly get access via these SR admin accounts. So everyone is admin on the data sources. That's also a very common problem. And you don't get a technical user or something which you can integrate into your system and use it straight away. Most of the time you have to talk with the IT to get a not so open access to this. And because if you build a system, you don't want access to everything. You want to have the system to have access to just the part of the data you're looking at the moment, so you can monitor it and you have, yeah, kind of security. And then to the harmonization part, mainly, or most of the time you talk to one part of the company. Most of the time it's the IT part, and the IT part doesn't have a real idea of all the different parts of the company wanting their own standardization and own harmonization of the data. So whatever you're building, it has to be very flexible to everything that comes. And you have to keep that in mind and have to be aware that you have to talk to all the different parts of the company and get their standardization, because there is never one standardization. So that's my point of view of all these problems. So.
Thanks, Andreas. I couldn't agree more towards your emphasis on most of the times when we talk about data integration, it is unfortunately not as easy as picking data from one system, one file, one business unit within a corporate enterprise, or one country maybe. It's very often that we see data needs that are at the end of this journey, where we are now talking at the start of the journey, where we start off integration, and then we talked obviously on Monday about data quality, yesterday about data modeling for those who haven't been able to join the sessions that we had already. Also, we highly recommend you to look into the sessions that are upcoming around data governance and about data consumption. What we see is that on the one side, people would like to have this much more consolidated view and understand data from their perspective, from their business narrative. But from a data integration point of view, to your point, we very often need to face different standards, different definitions, and it is very crucial to keep that in mind when you think about solving data integration challenges, because you will, for quite sure, come across those. And good that we now in our session are also able to give you some answers towards some of those challenges, in particular also how you want to cope or how you can manage the different standards within your corporate. With that, over to you, Lucas, to give us a glimpse of what we think is possible there to achieve.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. So we have taken inspiration from the problems that the colleagues here have mentioned. So first of all, integration of data. Inherently, it might not be very flexible. You might have to stuff it into some sort of format, some sort of structure for other tools to take it. And when you start dealing with very known systems like Salesforce, like Dynamics, it's great. It's very defined. It's very easy to integrate into these systems. But the enterprise MDM world is not necessarily about the most known systems. There are some obscure ones out there as well. So when we were building the integration layer here at CluedIn, we have taken the decision that we are not going to limit the format of data that you're pushing. We are not going to put you in a structure that you need to push data into. Of course, statements like that have to come with a little asterisk saying, yes, it has to be JSON if you're pushing it into our native endpoint ingestion. We accept Excel files, but the header has to be in a particular place, and the CSV is the same, right? But effectively, under the hood at CluedIn, we take in any type of data as long as it's in one of the mentioned formats, and we ingest it into our system. And from there, if you have missed a session from yesterday, I recommend you to watch it. We map the data, and it's immediately become your golden record. You don't have to ingest all of the source systems necessarily, although it helps. But just with the simple integration layer we have built, even one system can start help you making data-backed decisions in just a matter of a couple of weeks. Now, you will still need IT, of course, to aid you with ingesting data into CluedIn if you want it in a production way. So I'm referring to using tools such as Azure Data Factory, Databricks, fabric to push data into our MDM platform. But you, as a user, not necessarily a technical user, can still upload data and get value if you just have a CSV file or if you have an Excel file. Like Andreas mentioned, these are not operational databases. The data will become stale, but until it becomes stale, you're still winning, you're still getting value, and you're still analyzing your data. We have also built it with scale in mind. So everything, including lands in a landing zone that you can reprocess over and over again without re-ingesting all of the data. If you change the mapping, it will be consumed from CluedIn's landing zone rather than you having to go back to the source and fetch all of the data. It is powerful because we provide you with the endpoint, and you push data from whatever tool that may be, whatever tool serves as an integration platform in your business. And of course, using tools like Azure Data Factory unlocks you to use over 200 native two-way integrations to some of the most commonly used tools. So we leverage that as well. And as well as you can push data into CluedIn, you can also push data back to the sources using the ADF and the pipelines that we have built. And all of this is achieved through a low-code automated data integration layer that is quite simple to use. And I believe if you look around in your business, look at your colleagues, you will definitely find someone that can leverage a tool, an integration platform to ingest data into a system like CluedIn. Thank you.
Wow, that is a powerful summary, Lucas. Many thanks. Just before we continue, one question, Lucas, also in context of like your project experience. There might be a couple of questions in the audience. One that strikes immediately to my view when I browse across the slide is that analogy here, as it's just as easy to integrate the tool one, which I assume is like also data source or system one, to integrate tool or data source system 301. Could you just elaborate a little bit from your point of view, like how does this then actually works in a project? How do you see this typically happening? What is happening then in the CluedIn platform by bringing in the 8 or 80 system?
Yeah, of course. So if we're solely talking about the integration layer, it's the same integrating system number 1 as system number 80, because mainly due to its schema-less approach, right? If you take the schema from the tool number 1 and tool number 80, they will be wildly different. It might not even have the same domain of data. But if you push it into separate data sources, CluedIn doesn't really care where it's coming from, right? We don't require you to put it into any type of structure. And if you use a tool that requires you to put it in a structure, then of course you'll have to continuously expand that schema that you're accepting into your piece of software, where we simply don't really care what type of structure it comes in. That's one of the main wins, I would say. Of course, the follow-up on that is the data modeling. Once you actually have landed it in CluedIn, and once you want to get into golden records, the data model included is also flexible and mutable. So if you're ingesting 20 different CRM systems containing your customer records, you'll be able to just expand that customer model and fit it to really serve all 20 different CRM systems if you actually do have that type of use case. So that's how we achieve that scale. Under the hood, there are some smarts as well. When all of the data is landing, we are landing it in a message broker. So you might push data from various and many different sources, and it will just be queued for processing. So you can scale the processing power when you're processing more crucial data, and you might scale down when you're processing not so important data to save cost, for example. So there's plenty of ways to look at the scale angle.
Many thanks, Lucas. Also appreciate you point out towards the end that flexibility of CluedIn being it's so cloud native that we can scale up and scale down. Of course, often we get asked what is about scaling up, like how many millions, how many systems. And thanks for also elaborating again about this very flexible an agile approach from CluedIn, onboarding different systems as per business requirements, as per project demand, but also being able to slow down and pause a bit, either for reiteration or just for the sake of less cloud consumption, to your point. Many thanks. Now, before we give also the opportunity to you, Andreas, to share again a bit further also from the Adesso best practices in those projects. Lucas, could you just give us also a little brief overview on this high level CluedIn architecture here and what that again means in terms of data integration?
Sure. Yeah. So this diagram encapsulates everything that I was just referring to, right? You have all of the different sources on the left-hand side, all of them being pulled by Azure Data Factory. So Data Factory, in this case, handles all of the connectors, handles all of the classic REST API dance, all the authentication dance, and then it pushes JSON files, JSON into an endpoint that belongs to CluedIn. This is where we accept that data. There are arrows pointing to the top saying third-party data providers, and this step is optional, however, highly recommended. So CluedIn allows you to integrate to third-party data providers. For example, Companies House in UK that holds all of the British companies and typically contains their most accurate and up-to-date information. So you're taking that third-party data and putting into your golden record, effectively enriching what you had originally in your source systems, whether by expanding that golden record or just updating the values to the more relevant ones. If you look at the bottom of this diagram, this is something quite interesting. So Purview CluedIn rather, has a native integration to Purview. And this allows us, first of all, and on topic to this discussion, to grab all of the data sources that you have mapped and scanned in your Purview instances. So for example, your Azure Data Factory pipelines, your files that you have scanned, your Excels, your CSVs, and that can be used directly in CluedIn to ingest data from these sources, thanks to Purview providing us with the software and opportunity to do that. So you're saving time as well without rebuilding, reconnecting all of these pipelines simply by having them in Purview. And then there are some overarching wins there as well by importing the models, the glossaries out of Purview into CluedIn and translating it into your golden records. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, this is where the data exits CluedIn. So you can do analytics using Power BI, using Fabric. You can store that data in your good old Azure Storage, SQL Server, warehouse. And this is where the rest of your business actually gets the value and gets to hold on to these golden records coming out of a system like CluedIn is at this final destination where the data may land. We also integrate with Power Automate, and this is the tool for you to build custom interfaces to the platform, build custom approval workflows, etc., where your business users might interact with a simple form, with a simple automation tool that's not necessarily a fully blown MDM platform. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. And just to reiterate on this point of the third-party data providers, I couldn't agree more with you. What we've seen already from our customers gaining business benefit from this in the past, very often very tedious effort of bringing external data in. Also very often this was referred to with reference data management. Reference data could be here, of course, anything to your point of maybe data about business and business addresses in the UK, or whether this is a tax address book, or whether this is international phone number standards, and so on and so forth, right? That thanks to CluedIn, and again, this flexible integration and ingestion approach that we utilize also for your diverse enterprise data can be utilized in the same principle over here and bring the data in CluedIn together. Now, Andreas, we've spoken a lot about integration now, about the challenges, about also a couple of unique ways of how CluedIn can help to overcome those. please share with us a little bit about Adesso and your perspective to those projects.
Yeah, the last slide was a good view on to go over this slide, because you see there's CluedIn in the middle, and there's a whole platform surrounding it. And normally you have a partner like Adesso building these platforms or optimizing the already platforms that are built in the customer environment. And that's us, and we are Adesso. And as you can see on the right side, when CluedIn is in the middle, we, for example, build the data platform surrounding it, including CluedIn as a system, or we do some data management platforms, empowering CluedIn to do that, what it can do best. And in the end, yeah, we're doing data migration from different systems, mostly into the cloud, and then, for example, into CluedIn. And I brought two spotlight projects with me. This is, for example, the one customer is also a standard project, was centered on getting all the data from the different systems, where you have little bits of data about your customer, and you want to have in the end one golden customer. That's our 360 view around the customer you want to have, or the one product where you follow your product from the first material to the end product, but it goes to so many systems, and you want to have the view over every bits of data in these systems integrated into one product, one digital twin, for example, of this product. Or the third project, which is one ID projects, where we go through all the systems which have their own IDs, and we put these IDs into one ID coming out of the MDM system. And for all this to be possible in all the different vertices, we are using or leveraging our knowledge, because Adesso is not just focused on one. We have, for example, from managing industry for manufacturing industry to banking over insurance, everything is covered at Adesso. So back to Søren.
Many thanks, Andreas. And I just would like to emphasize before we go to the next slide, to your point on the value add a strategic partner like Adesso can bring to CluedIn and to CluedIn's customers goes beyond technology and data platforms and data initiatives. It's, to your point, also incorporating subject matter expertise and knowledge from several industries that, of course, your large organization gained from those years of executing those projects with insurances, with retailers, manufacturers, banks, and the likes, right? That is often very much appreciated, because we talk a lot about data, but at the end of the day, and this is also where we would like to summarize that again, at the end of the day, this is, I'm not saying not useful, but I'm saying the full value that you are gaining out of your improved data foundation is once you bring that improved data back into your business processes. And very often what we see is, once, thanks to this platform here, thanks to this approach from CluedIn of bringing different data from heterogeneous landscapes into an homogeneous and uniform and standardized understanding, to then provision it back into your business processes, and for any kind of data consumer to utilize that and make the right business decisions on top of this. Often what we also see in those projects, where it comes back to the expertise of Andreas and the Adesso team, is to help you then also modernize the business processes thanks to the better insights that you get now from the data. So where do we play this data back into our business processes? And of course, this is why it is so crucial that when we talk about data integration, to also think about governance, to also think about this operational setup, because this is where you can really unlock a huge business value when you have achieved this gathering from multiple systems in such a high automated degree that you are very flexible in how you provision those insights back to your business, whether this is then a real-time dashboard, or whether this is once a day, or whether this is as per the needs that they can proactively consume this data from a self-service BI layer. You have all the options the moment, thanks to CluedIn and Microsoft Azure services, you established a very strong, secure, and governed data integration setup. Now we have 2 minutes left. We are very happy across all questions that are coming in. Happy to try and answer maybe some of those now. Otherwise, we have them, if you put them in the chat, also in written and can follow up with you. Do not hesitate to reach out, of course, to us and the team for further alignment, for further discussion. And we are happily looking forward to welcome you again tomorrow when we talk about single views of any data domain, which is a nice follow-up towards Andreas' point of those 360 customer view projects or the one product data project.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for today's session. Today we're going to be talking about how to create a single view of any data domain. Today we'll take the next 30 minutes or so of your time to explore techniques of how to consolidate, integrate your data from various different sources, and discover really the tools that facilitate to unify that view of data, enhancing it consistently and reliable across the organization. I'm going to be your host today. I'm facilitating most of the conversation. I'm Samuel Dasaolu. I'm one of the account executives here at CluedIn and your main point of contact. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Lucas. He's our head of implementation. But Lucas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I have been with you all if you're following this whole week. My name is Lucas. I'm head of implementations here at CluedIn.
Thanks, Lucas. We're also joined by my colleague, Aaron, from Microsoft. And Aaron, would you like to give a quick introduction of yourself as well?
Yeah, so I'm a data and AI specialist at Microsoft. So if you're familiar with the Microsoft V teams, I sit across the account team as sort of the go-to person for data and AI programs, the holistic kind outside of the applications. Prior to joining Microsoft, I've worked at organizations such as Samaki, IBM, and Informatica as either the lead or a specialist in master data management. That's why I'm invited. So obviously I've got some war stories, and CluedIn are a strong partner of Microsoft. So yeah, nice to meet you all.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction there and introducing yourself really and truly. So we're actually going to pass back over to Aaron to get us started into some of the key aspects of building a single view.
Yeah, so guys, well, there you go. I was asked to just cover off something generic, right, which is, I mean, why do we need a single view? Is a bit of a broad statement, but why is it advantageous of having a single view of a particular domain or multiple domains? And I suppose a lot of this, my comments are going to come from my previous experience up till now, and obviously a lot of the problems that I'm seeing when I'm asked to engage in AI programs, right? Let's just go through here. So I pulled this slide together a long time ago and I haven't really changed it. So truth is data accuracy and readiness equals rapid time to value, right? So these aren't necessarily all the programs I'm involved in. I'm involved in a very specific niche vertical within Microsoft, but throughout my career I have worked with banking, CPG, retail. Now I'm working within the engineering space and that professional services area. But throughout my career we've often been brought problems like this as sort of data vendors or data professionals when I was in services. And the truth be told, you can execute against any of these plus 50 more use cases or 100 more use cases with poor data. The problem that sits within that is the ability to execute quickly, right? So if the data isn't ready, these are the questions that I'll ask. Can we do some machine learning? Can we do some AI work generically, predictive, prescriptive analytics? How long will it take? And then the questions I ask back are, yes, we can certainly do that. We're in a world where the technology right now, as of today, for running these kind of workloads is better than it's ever been, especially at Microsoft. But then the pushback for me is, okay, is the data ready? Can we get hold of it quickly? The other thing is it accurate? Is it consistent? Because when we start looking at especially when we look at anomaly detection, prescriptive and predictive analytics, we do need some data, right? Some data over time, in essence, so a year, 2 years, 3 years. But if data is changing and not managed or mastered over that period, we then have to do data ratification work. And there are instances where I've worked with clients who are ready to go, right? We're ready to execute, we're ready to scope, it happens very quickly, who have what I'd say as a sort of a mastered view of that particular domain, whereas others, we have to enter into an 8-week cycle of fixing the data, right? So I put this down to 2 things, right, as an outcome. We've got total cost of ownership of a project, TCO goes up dramatically. And imagine if you've potentially got 2 or 3, 20 or 30 lines where you're looking at doing use cases and you have to spend 2 months fixing the data each time. And you can fix it, it might be relevant in a year's time, but you necessarily haven't documented it properly. You have to do it all over again for next year. So total cost of ownership per one goes through the roof, right? It starts to cascade. Then we have opportunity cost, and this is quite relevant to the business and the business stakeholders. If we can execute against these in weeks, not months, some of these use cases that I work on or have been worked on by my clients over the years have resulted in multi-million-pound returns. Some of them are 10, 20,000 pound return. So the small ones aren't typically worth going after because if there's a lot of work involved, but if it's very quick to get hold of that data to do a job where you might just get a 10 or a 5-figure return is worth doing, right? It's a couple of days to do it. So this statement stands true, and the more the business is hearing about AI right now, the more that I'm having this kind of conversation, and the more we have to go back into, have you governed the data correctly and is it managed correctly? So that's just one. Why is, I'm just going to use good data, important. Think of it those 2 ways: repeat cost and what's the opportunity cost. The other thing I like to pull out, and I actually use this slide unofficially at Microsoft when I'm talking to teams that so I've obviously worked with a few accounts and quite close with them, but I use this as sort of unofficially to talk about sort of data strategy and holding data in a sort of easy to access manner. And the narrative here is quite simple, really. I mean, you want to remove an application, and the ERP is in this picture, right? So it's kind of, you want to remove an application for whatever reason. You found a better one that will actually offer return to your business, or you found a much cheaper one that does the same thing. Right, it's not effective. The question I always ask the IT guys is, remove that. How hard is it going to be to get that ERP out? And then often, because people have gone through cycles where they've tried to remove applications and then given up, quite frankly, it's because they've got 2 or 3 months to make a decision, but then suddenly they get a consultancy in who starts to try and unravel all this. And you'll notice if you look at the beginning of any statement of work for an application removal, there's 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks worth of discovery work, which then often means that the proposal becomes quite large, the risk becomes quite large, and also the renewal for the application that you've already got, well, that's already come up. You've got to renew again, and then you go through the same cycle over and over again. Not everybody is the same, but I've seen it. So I look at that as an optimization play, right? So it's how can we optimize the applications that we're using to face the business or to help us make decisions. I just like that slide. Again, unofficial. I just like it because it purposely looks messy. What do we move to when we start looking at sort of an MDM? And I'm supposed to talk about MDM generically, but obviously I'm on a CluedIn call, so I'm going to use the logo. What's the difference? So in essence, we're pointing multiple integrations into one place, right? So we've already managed to map those integrations. We're going to hold them there for a long time. And bits of all of that data is going to be pushed into various applications on the outside. Good news. Now, if we decide that we want to use some of that data or all of that data, you might be using other data sources, by the way. You won't necessarily have everything in MDM. Can you start spinning up some analytics use cases, especially if you're drawing multiple domains together in the same place? Yes, it's quite quick to do that because you understand the data and it's managed properly and you trust it. Can we spin up another one? Yes, we can. And the important thing is, so I came across the term headless a couple of years ago when I was working for a vendor, and part of what we did was PIM. And I kind of understood headless from an e-com perspective. And it's very relatable to pretty much every business aspect. And headless is, have we got the capability to spin up our products in the Ukraine tomorrow or whatever country, in whatever language, with the right regulatory data attached to it? Are we good for that? So in short, what headless means is, yes, we can. We have the data ready. We trust it. We need to possibly do some minor ratification, and then we push that out into Amazon Marketplace in another country or a distributor in another country. But the data is trusted, secured, and there's one point of integration. Okay, it's all managed centrally. So in essence, if we want to start removing things and putting new things in, we've got the accelerator here to do that. I'll give an example and then I'll jump to my last slide. So years back, not too many years, but some years ago, I'm not going to try and say when because it'll say where I worked. I was with a very large vehicle manufacturer, global one, and they said, "But we need an MDM. How do we do this?" And we spent a number of hours trying to figure out what the return on investment is, and it's really difficult to do that sometimes. When we started unpicking the programs for that year, we spotted that there was a CRM upgrade, and I said, "Can we have a look at your patterns, all the things that you want to integrate into your CRM?" And it did pretty much relate to, I have to backward pedal, something that looked like that. And when we started actually scoping how much they were costing to integrate into the CRM, it pretty much paid for, and this is older tech, not the same as CluedIn, it pretty much paid for 75% of the implementation into CluedIn, because we were literally pushing all that same data and mastering it. The additional work was making sure the data model fared and getting people trained up on the actual platform. But just that one use case, that one application pretty much paid for the core implementation of that domain. Outside of that one thing, there was about 10 different analytics use cases they can address. That's a real example of, I can't go into too much detail, but that's a real example of where we actually looked at just standardizing data and putting it into one place, but then it had the cascading effects of everything else. Traditionally, MDM projects can be large. I've been involved in some quite quick ones. They do require a lot of scoping, though, a lot of planning. So as much as the implementation is quick, the planning is significant. I think to move and pass it over to the CluedIn team, these are the kind of things you'd expect. There's probably more than this, right? If I'm going to be real, but these are the big ones. So upfront data modeling. We need to figure out a data model. And another vendor I worked for, we used to sell the data model, right? Years back, right? And that would cost because it would save so much time, and it was just a starting point data model. Integrations can be complex. Yeah, that's often half the battle. And then obviously you've got the data quality issues and the data ratification piece. So bringing that data into a standardized format so it can match better and perform better. So as much as we've got those lovely reasons why we should do it, we've got the TTO, total cost of ownership of doing new projects. We've got the opportunity cost of not doing them. We've got that whole fact that sometimes we feel locked in because we can't be headless with our architecture. We still face challenges around getting out of that state. And this is where I hand over to the CluedIn guys, because I'm not going to speak for their product at all. So if you guys want to grab the slides off me, because I don't really want to be managing those. Perfect, thank you. Oh, by the way, CluedIn team, did that make sense?
Absolutely. Really appreciate that, Aaron. You know, I've been a fan of that disconnected silo slide. I said I'm going to borrow it and use it because it does paint a picture of the reality and the mess.
I literally just grabbed it off images off the internet. Obviously, it was big.
Yeah. Yeah, as we try to go into, do you know what I mean? Aaron just talked about some of those issues. Just pass over to Lucas to actually be able to talk about how we solve those within the CluedIn platform. Lucas? I don't know if he's frozen. I feel like there's a part of him that was
either that or he's just building us up to this amazing statement he's going to draw through.
No, yeah.
No, I think you're going to have to roll there.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine. As Lucas comes back on, I'll be able to talk in on some of a few of these slides. Essentially, those core problems that Aaron spoke about, the upfront having to do the upfront modeling, right? That's some of the aspects that we see the customers taking the most amount of time, and being able to do away with that not just increases the time to value, but also reduces that cost that Aaron was also talking about. Utilizing, how do we do this, right? We're utilizing graph database, so NoSQL technologies, allowing data to be able to connect naturally without actually having to predefine the model, right? So you don't have to spend so much time with your whiteboard behind you talking about, okay, what does our whole data landscape look like, right? Where, what domains are we trying to actually stitch together? What do they look like? What some of these domains that they have in common, and how are we really starting to start that process? And I've heard from so many different customers that when they've attempted this in the past, it's taken a minimum of 6 months, right? Sometimes I was talking to a customer last week, and they said when they've done it in the past, it took over 2 years just to build that data model, right? Before you're actually plugging it into the MDM system that you've bought and invested in. Again, that's all time that's being delayed and not even able to actually build out value within the platform itself. So CluedIn does away with that upfront modeling aspects, allowing data to connect naturally without predetermining the model, allowing that automated data integration. It's like patterns to remove the hurdles that you typically experience when trying to connect this data. And that is one of the aspects that Aaron also mentioned, the actual connection of those data together. Lucas, you're back. Do you want to take over as I don't know if you heard any aspects of it.
I believe I'm back, and I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. So getting thumbs up, cool. Wouldn't be an IT job without IT issues. So thank you for bearing with me. Yeah. So as Aaron has started there are some key challenges that we face. I've been facing every day with my customer for the last 7 years, and first of the challenges that were mentioned was the upfront data modeling and kind of the challenges associated with it. So realistically, when you think about the diagram that we shared previously with a lot of different data sets, you're trying to take, let's say, 10 very different source systems and build something that's a single view of a customer, a single golden record. It is going to be tricky if you need to push it into the same kind of structure, same format. So what we have done in CluedIn is we have identified this very early on building the product, and we always strived and built it in a way where you don't necessarily have to define the structure that the data is coming in. There are some asterisks, some caveats with me saying this, but as long as it's in a JSON format, we will take everything. We will store it, and then we will allow the end user to actually map it into the common data model. Now, the common data model is, again, another challenge that we have. If it's something you have to define upfront and it becomes something that is set in stone, you will have difficulty integrating system. Maybe you'll be fine integrating system 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but what about system 30, 40, and 50? So what we have done is we have made our golden records common data models completely mutable. So if you are ingesting new data sources, you're bringing in new systems, you can adjust your golden record model to fit whatever the business, an ever-evolving business, actually needs at all times. You change it and it will be reflected across the entire MDM platform. So all of your rules, all of your streams will cater for that, will adhere to that, and the golden records will be shaped with the new data model in mind. Now, the integration challenges, it is something that we have tried to solve ourselves historically by building connectors to all of the known and less known source systems out there. And what we quickly realized is that, like Aaron mentioned, it is tricky. It's not an easy task. Every system has a different integration point. Well, I'll be honest, it was a nightmare. So what we discovered that our friends over at Microsoft have a tool called Azure Data Factory that is effectively solved all of our integration problems. There are folks at Microsoft who take care of building the connectors. We are using these connectors to pull data into CluedIn. Now, it's worth mentioning that ADF is a great tool, but it's one of the tools. A lot of our customers, especially in larger enterprises, they already have their integration platforms that can take data from the source system, transform it into JSON, transform it into CSVs, and push it over the wire. So on CluedIn side, we simply just expose a REST endpoint and accept any type of data you throw at us, as long as it's in JSON. If you're only aiming to ingest a small data set. Maybe you received a list of attendees from the latest event from your marketing team, and you still want to master that. We also built support around Excel and CSV files. And at the end, for the end user, it's basically just as simple as dragging and dropping the file into the system, mapping it, and it will either create golden records or enrich these records. Now that I touched the topic of enrichment, we have also built a lot of connectors to the third-party data sources here at CluedIn. Data sources such as global UK company register called Companies House, a very widely used third-party data provider called Duns & Bradstreet, etc. And these really enhance and empower your data with either expanding and bringing in additional fields, additional information that you never had in your source systems, or typically it contains a more accurate, more up-to-date data, especially from the government-owned data sites, that you can basically clean that data, clean your golden records automatically using third-party data. So all of that is achieved, including through the enrichment. So if we circle back a little bit and kind of cover the challenges that were raised previously, pre-CluedIn, we have tackled the data models, and you don't necessarily have to define it upfront. It is ever growing. With the combination and the native Azure integration, we have also tackled the complexities of data integration and automated data integration into CluedIn. And with the fact that we don't necessarily need upfront modeling, and you don't have to model the inbound data as well, we support all types of data, whether it's CRM customers, whether it's leads, whether it's product data, even to degree of transactions and logs. We have processed and ingested everything, including. So that is how we solve the problems. Thank you. Off to you, Simon.
Really appreciate that. And yeah, as we're going through all of this, feel free to ask questions. We'll be able to kind of address most of those as we're moving forward. I just wanted to quickly wrap up in terms of what we actually presented before we go into some of the questions on this slide here. This is one of my favorite slides because I think it's so important to be able to predict future trends, customer behavior, product development, employees, acquisitions, retention, and so much more. However, just like Lucas and Aaron mentioned, it's all about having the right data at the right time for the intended use cases, right? So not having all those data being already stitched together and having that delayed process means it's just taking you guys so much longer to be able to get to a place where your data is not just able to actually address those use cases, but is in a state where it's reliable and trustworthy. So you actually know that, okay, this is actually a representation of all our clients. This is actually a representation of all our assets, all of our vendors, et cetera, and you actually fully trust that this data that you're wanting to make the strategic decisions on acquisitions, mergers, whatever it may be, is actually reliable. And these opportunities give the business room for expansion, competitive advantage, and so much more. And that's what CluedIn really does, right? Take advantage. CluedIn takes part all these different aspects, what makes MDM hard to implement, right? The time that's actually taken to model the data, to stitch it together, and we make it so much more simpler, faster, and better to be able to completely remove the need for that headache that you had, right? So that 3 months implementation phase that usually takes to actually, like Aaron mentioned, actually take to get the MDM up and running is completely gone within CluedIn. The dread and the headache that you go through, okay, will this system that we're trying to implement, will it actually be able to scale to how the business is trying to scale, the ambitions that you already have, those are gone as well. That 6 month Excel job of modeling your data, completely gone, involving IT, reaching out to say, okay, I need access to this particular data. Can you help me figure out how this data fits together? No, you now have that ability being a business user. So that's completely gone. Building up up these catalog for the business rules and the data quality rules, and it lives in one person's head, and if they go on vacation, you don't quite know, is this black box of rules has been built up and is based on dependencies. But again, this is all valuable and needed, but that worry is also gone. Worrying about feeling that did I get the model right? Will it be able to scale? Again, is it all the right attributes? Are they right? Again, all those aspects are gone. That worry of MDM, will it integrate nicely with existing technology stack, like that diagram that we have? But then what about future technologies, future data points that you're getting in from suppliers, competitors, whatever it is, the market? Again, that's gone, that hesitation to actually onboard new data because you don't quite know if it's going to break the schema that you have within the organization, and with it and the headache that you had from implementing the last one, that's completely gone as well. And that concern of the running cost of projects without showing a single value for months and months and even years to the senior stakeholders, and they're coming to you and telling you, so what's the value that we've been able to build up over time, and you have nothing to show it because you're still in this upfront modeling phase. You're still trying to stitch together, figure that out. All those worries are completely gone within the CluedIn platform. So before I actually move on to that, I'll go back one slide and actually let's pick up some of the questions that are coming in. It says, do you have a list of connectors to third parties that you provide? I think, Aaron, you touched upon that. I don't know if you want to jump back on for that.
As in the CluedIn connectors, I think that's more you guys, isn't it, than me?
Yeah, I was about to hop
Yeah,
in.
so it's more the third-party connectors. Yeah. I think they're talking about, as well as some of the out-of-the-box things. I mean, for ADF's sake, you can have a quick look up. It's fully open, but outside of ADF, it's whatever you guys have to offer.
Yeah, so I just sent you a quick link in the chat with some of our enrichers that we support. They're all open source, and some of the notable ones are, of course, Duns & Bradstreet, VATLayer, Google Maps, CVR registry if you're from Denmark, Companies House if you are from UK, Open Corporates. I'll stop there, but there's quite a few, and the list is forever growing.
Yeah. There's another question. Are there any costs to use certain connectors? Are they all included as part of the platform? I think from our side, in terms of a cost perspective, all our third-party enrichers and the API connectors are completely free of charge now. If wherever you're getting the provider, if you need a subscription for it, and there's a cost to actually pull in the data on those API calls, then there would be a cost. But the actual there's no additional cost within the CluedIn platform itself for the connectors. Again, we'll be able to support you building that if ADF pipeline or API connectors are not the right fit for those use cases. But yeah, those are something that there's no additional cost from a CluedIn perspective if you already have access to some of these third parties enrichers. Another question is there any storage on CluedIn side or any useful API connectors? Lucas, do you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but CluedIn is storing all of your golden records. It is storing the raw data that you have pushed in a temporal holding area. And in terms of API connectors, I assume you are referring to pulling data out of CluedIn. So we provide a graph query language interface for you to pull data out of CluedIn.
Appreciate that, Lucas. The last question that we can see on there, and feel free, if we don't get to your question today, feel free to email myself. For anybody trying to access some of the previous sessions from earlier this week, I believe from the communication that we have from our team that all of them are actually going to be available from next week, right? So rather than it being available throughout the week, once the complete series is done tomorrow, then yeah, you're more than I'm sure the recording will be sent out to everybody that registered. And also you can see there on the screen, feel free to join us for the last day tomorrow, where it's data lineage made simple. Feel free to scan the QR code if you're not already registered, or you want to be able to save it for later, whatever that may be. The time is 2 p.m. BST time tomorrow for anybody that hasn't been able to sign up already. And Yeah, just lastly here, you can see we talked a lot about being able to get value quickly. Here at CluedIn, we pride ourselves on being agile and really being able to deliver value back to the business as quickly as possible, right? So we're not saying we're going to fix all your data issues in 6 weeks. However, we aim to actually get some value back to the business, whether it's just enriching your address data, whether it's normalizing your customer list, whatever it may be within the organization. Try to isolate use cases that has a quick return of investment, quick value that can be demonstrated back to the organization. And just lastly, like I mentioned, if you have any questions at all, feel free to send myself or anybody else that was on with us, Aaron or Lucas, an email. But any other questions that we're not able to address today, we'll be able to collate that and respond via email. But really appreciate everyone for joining us today, and it's been great, and appreciate the questions. Thank you, Lucas and Aaron, for jumping on and supporting on this, and we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Welcome to our final session of our Master Your Data in Week series. Today we will be talking about a data lineage made simple. So with that, we will be discussing, how is it significant and why is it significant, and talk more around some of the tools and the traditional way versus the modern way. Following more or less the same structure of all the series that we've done this week for those who have attended multiple sessions. It will take about 30 minutes out of your time, but then again, it's Friday, so we're going to power through, bit of energy, and we will try to keep it short and sweet. My name is Zach. I am the Enterprise Sales Lead for CluedIn, and I am joined today by my colleague, Lucas. Lucas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you, Zach. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas. I'm the head of implementations here at CluedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining me again, Lucas. This is our second session today, this week, sorry. So yeah, let's get started. Now, again, talking of the importance of data lineage, this is more for context purposes. Again, some of you might be already, or you are a data veterans, or you are more of an MDM expert, so probably you know already about this, and some of you may not. So this is more of a thought sharing to put context in what's coming afterwards, right? I mean, for those of you who are involved in an MDM product or using an MDM or master data management solution so far, knows how important it is for us to make sure that our data lineage is on point, right? And there are many, many obvious reasons for that. Some of them, or the three that came to mind, are traceability, accuracy, and usability of the data. But there are more, right? There is the aspect of data quality and integrity. Is very, very important, big one, right? If we make sure that we have identified the source and make sure that we correct the errors, therefore we can trust more the data, and the data lineage is a lot more, accurate. Make sure that we are consistent across all different systems. MDM should be the glue, should be the bridge, should be the solution that kind of help you centralize your data, right? It will help, again, validate the data transformation and processes that are performed, and not even performed, are they performed correctly? That's the main point here, right? There is the second big one that I'm sure quite a few of you are aware of or wary of, is more from compliance and auditability perspective, right? Transparency is very important. The data lineage help get us that transparency in how the data has been collected, how has it been processed, and how can it be used, right? Documentation required for the audits and regulatory checks, again, comes from the fact that we can pull this accurate and trustworthy information from a data lineage perspective, without even talking about the examples of GDPR and HIPAA, and making sure that we have the assurances for the from an auditability, my goodness, perspective, that we are on point with our data. There are many others like impact analysis, root cause analysis, and of course, who says data lineage says what? Data governance, right? So it's all part of that loop, and this is why having a efficient, modern, good, flexible, scalable data lineage is very, very important. Now, with that said, these are some of the questions, without reading from the screen, that data lineage should be solving. And if it's not solving them for you, then probably is about time that you have to review what you've got in place already and start maybe looking at some of the tools out there that can help answer these questions, right? Things like, where did this data originated from? What happened to the data? Why were certain transformation applied? All of these are quite important questions that data lineage, okay, not only data lineage, but data lineage alongside a good data governance tool should be answering for you. All right. Now, oops. Here we are. All right. So for those of you who've been throughout these series this week, we followed this format. We were talking about the importance of the topic. I had a session with Lucas talking about data modeling, right? And we put a little bit of context as well, but then we talked about how is it done now, aka a traditional approach versus what we think it should be out there from a modern perspective, which CluedIn represents. And the same thing here, right? Guess what? If you're using a tool from a master data management perspective alongside a data governance tool that is championing some of this traditional approach to your data quality, lineage, and governance, you will fall from a data lineage perspective, if we isolate it, in the same, again, issues that you would fall in if you are going about your data integration, for example, from an MDM perspective, or your data modeling, or your golden record creation. So these should come as no surprise. So if we are going to be looking at the traditional approach, which focuses heavily on a lot of, again, going back to the topic we discussed, Lucas, right? A lot of upfront data modeling, which is, 100% of the time manual Excel sheets, hideous, takes a lot of time, a lot of resources to get done. Well, guess what? That transcends to some of the functionalities that your traditional MDM tool is bringing. And one of them is data lineage, right? So that's what the modern approach champions, is this automation that you can leverage, right? And we talked about this before. Why we truly believe in automation? It's because, look, for us, MDM, including data lineage, should be something that's easy to use, should be something that is welcoming for different personas of the business, not only the technical colleagues. Therefore, we need to have something easy to use that is not restrictive and have some sort of elements of automation that's gonna, again, make the whole process a lot more easier, streamlined, and quick. And that's, from a modern perspective, what data lineage, at least from a CluedIn perspective, is about, or should be about. And we can talk about the rest in the same manner, right? Limited scope, right? This is an important one. Again, going back to that limitation that the traditional approach gives us, which is, you know what, we need to set a certain number of data sources, and we stick with those, because we know if we're going to add a new data source, we have to go back and remodel and put everything together before we can get it through the MDM solution. And that's given us that very limited scope from a data lineage perspective. And we do that in batches as well. So I'll let you imagine how that gets complicated as the data grows, as the data volume grows, as the data types diversifies, right? A modern approach should not be able to restrict us when it comes to our data lineage, following the same principle of having a fluid, flexible, more scalable approach to master data management and data lineage. It should give us that comprehensive view of what happened to our data from A to Z without any limitations or restrictions. Again, we're doing this for an auditability perspective, for compliance perspective, for the sake of making sure that our data is reliable. So it's very important for us to have more of a holistic view rather than more a limited or constrictive view. The same goes with complexity and scale. I think you get the gist of it. So the whole idea behind this slide is, when you are evaluating or looking to master your data, try to check what can that tool do from a traditional versus modern perspective. And I will talk about more what that means from our angle here exactly. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Lucas.
Thank you, Zach. So one of the most frequent questions that I get from our customers is, why is Golden Record looking like that in CluedIn? Why is it this way? Why did it merge with this other record? Why did this winning property has been picked over the other winning, potentially winning value? And to answer that, we have a couple of features in CluedIn to help you. So first of all, we keep track of all of the history that ever touch the golden record. So whether it's brand new records coming in and merging, whether it's manual user edits, whether it's updates coming from the source system, all of that is built into the history of the golden record. You can pivot based on a data source. You can pivot based on a particular property and track how it changed throughout its lifetime. But we have solved that, and that is all automatic, ready for you to view. On top of that, we have a graph type of view that shows how all of the raw source records came into the system and how they made the golden record to be. So what caused these records to merge, what type of identifier was used to decide that it should merge. And if we take a step back and kind of look at the wider platform, we provide a global data model across the entire platform. So how all of your entities, how all of your records are connected on a top level global scale. Furthermore, we provide you a full breakdown, entity per entity, domain per domain, of where it enters, which data sources it enters, which rules affect these records, and where do they finally stream out. And that's all good and well that it lives in CluedIn. So that means that people that are administrating CluedIn instances, people that are close to master data management solution can see that, but there is a problem in the wider business. So, you know, your IT people, perhaps, your upper management, they most likely will not go into a master data management system to see the lineage because, well, that is a tool that is solving a very particular problem. These type of people, these type of business users will probably opt in to look at something that is designed to do data governance, not MDM. For example, one of our partners and software that is used by a lot of our customers is called Microsoft Purview. And that is what you can see on the screen. So as part of our Purview integration, we not only pull in sources, we don't only pull in all of the glossaries into CluedIn and allow you to map it into, we also build out a full lineage inside your Purview instance. So if you have, and if you're using Purview already in your organization, once CluedIn starts connecting to it, we will effectively expand the existing lineages, add graphs that you can see on the screen right now coming from CluedIn, and just extend the entire journey of your data by adding the component of CluedIn. So this is very helpful if you are viewing data sources to see that it is flowing through your MDM system. It is easy to figure out what is not flowing through your MDM system, but potentially should. So if you're viewing it from the glossaries perspective in Purview, you will be able to very quickly see that, okay, I have my addresses coming from 4 out of 5 source systems. We need to solve that. And of course, it also aids you to see where that data lands at the final destination. So CluedIn will stream data out of the MDM platform and perhaps land it into something like SQL Server or Azure Blob Storage. And within Purview, you will be able to see that as one of the destinations where that data lands. And this is important, especially if you are in a European country where GDPR law does apply. You have to be able and you have to be in control over where all of your data is flowing through, where is it landing. So in combination with CluedIn and Purview, and this is a Purview screenshot that you are seeing, you will be able to answer all of the questions coming down from business. Where is this data coming from? Which source system is this coming from? Where is it landing? What is it mapping to? Even what keys are actually being mapped to? What attributes am I pulling? What attributes am I streaming? And most importantly, where am I distributing this data further? So these two tools in combination will provide you not only good high quality data quality records, golden records, sorry, but also full lineage, full governance over that data as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucas. And yes, I mean, as mentioned earlier, we can't talk about data lineage without talking about data governance. And there are quite a few exciting elements that we would love to share with you if you are interested later about how CluedIn complements Purview and how Purview complements CluedIn. There is a native connection there, a native integration. So there is a ton of value to uncover and discuss there. All right. So recycled slide that I've used before, but I think it does illustrate very well this modern approach from all aspects of master data management, including data lineage. Again, our idea here is not to restrict you from a data source perspective. So no matter what data source, no matter what data volume or data type, it's something that can be pulled into the modern approach or CluedIn. And then obviously we don't want to restrict you when it comes to downstream applications or data consumers. Really, what's important for us is this idea of making sure that the data processing bit in middle is done, again, efficiently, on scalable way, and easy enough to be used, and automation as well. So things like mapping and matching, things like deduplication and merging are quite important, but it's very, very important as well to touch base on the data governance, as Lucas just did, catalog and lineage. So when you think about it, really, ultimately what it comes down to this idea of traditional versus modern is things like, for example, the hesitation that you would have to onboard a new data because you know how hard it is the last system was to onboard should be gone with the new modern CluedIn approach. The concerns of running up huge project costs because showing a single piece of value within 6 months is not there, and you've been working and doing all this work and nothing that you can show to the business because you want to get your budget and you have promised and you have some KPIs to hit and deadlines, it's gone, because again, we focus on getting you to value quite quickly. Things like, first 6 months of Excel job and upfront data modeling is gone with the modern approach. And ultimately, what does that mean? It means that our focus is helping you to get to your ROI, as soon as possible. So fast track your journey to insight and value. Again, without forgetting the impact, with giving you the tools that you need to make sure that your data is trusted and the consumers are really happy while they're making the decision, knowing that they can trust the data and insights that you gave them. That being said, if you want to have, more of an in-depth conversation around CluedIn, data lineage, data modeling, any aspects of a master data management solution, please don't hesitate to get back to us. We will be more than happy to help you. And we will also send an email with further resources for you to look at, explore. And again, if after that you have any questions, please let us know. I thank you very much for your time. I know it's a Friday afternoon. We're all kind of trying to close our week and get on with our weekend. So I appreciate the time that you guys took to spend with us throughout the week.